Hey, this is Mikey with an After Effects tutorial, and in this video I'm doing a review, overview, and a tutorial about using Stardust. Mikey's Production Tips is brought to you by CinemaSpice, After Effects tools, video overlays and backgrounds, and sound effects. Stardust is a relatively new particle plugin, and it's really cool. Honestly, it's a big change in the way particle programs work. If you're used to Particular or Particle World or any of the built-in particle plugins with After Effects, this works totally differently, and it's really powerful the way it can do things. I'd say it's probably more than just a particle plugin because this new update can also do 3D objects and actual 3D stuff, and everything's built. It's node-based, as you can see right here. We've got these nodes, and so you can link everything together and have one thing driving a couple of different things, and you can do lots of stuff with it, and it's all in a single 3D space. So let's kind of take you through what you can do with it, and then let's build something fun. So let's open up a new composition, and let's just apply Stardust to a solid. Go to Effects, Superluminal, Stardust. You can get Stardust at aescripts.com, so there's a link in the description. Go and click on it, and it'll take you there. Stardust, starting out, is a particle. This looks like mostly every other particle program. When you start up, the default is just kind of this kind of a look. And so let's look here in this Stardust kind of window. And so what we have is we've got these effects, and everything that is its own node is a different effect that you add to it. So in my effects control, I have the Stardust effect, I have the emitter effect, and the particle effect that it adds to it automatically. You can see as I click on these, it'll highlight where they are, because once we start having lots of things to it, it's gonna navigating in here gets a little more difficult, so it's easy just to click on the thing you want to go to, and it'll go to it and put a green bar underneath it. So your emitter is what emits the particles, but you need to have a particle, or see right there, there's emitter emitting nothing. So we can add a particle. You can see that there's these hotkeys on the side, and I just link that particle to the emitter. So then I can go into the particle. Let's change the particle properties. I can make those bigger or smaller. Go into the emitter. Instead of a point, let's do a ring. And let's bring the speed down to 0. And default emitting once. Now, it disappeared because it was after 2 seconds. And if we go down to the lifespan of the particle, let's bring that up to 10 because I've got a 10-second comp. Okay, so that's, so far. But what we can also do is we can add all sorts of things to this. So I like the turbulence. So I can click that on, and I can do one of two things. I can link it to the particle there, or I can not have it linked to anything. And when it's not linked to anything, it'll affect everything. Or if I want it to only affect certain things, I'll just link it that way. So down in the turbulence, we can go in and, position offset and have a fractal speed. And then you can see it's moving around. Pretty cool. Let's just apply that to that particle. We also have forces. This is like wind, gravity, spin, things like that. We got fields. Fields are ways of distorting what you have. So you can see I've got this sphere, and it'll affect my particles as I sweep it across. And you can also do some bending as well. Pretty cool. The replicator, this is kind of like replicating something. If you're used to shape layers with the repeater, it works kind of similar. So if we come down here, we have what you're doing, offset. Then you have how many replicates there are. And then are you offsetting by XYZ or the angle or the scale? So if I were to come in here and do, say, offset by 1 on the X and change the replicants, you can see it goes out there, much like the repeater does if you're used to that in the shape layers. So let's actually go that back to 0, and let's change the scale on all those. And it scales out. Now, if we still have this turbulent, same thing. But this time it'll affect everything. It'll affect all of the replicates. Pretty cool. Now these other ones, we have transform. You can add this node to move things around. Extra motion to particles. Some shading. And then now down here we have models. So new models and a new material. Now the easy way to kind of do this is you can see there's a preset browser up here. I'm going to just delete all this. And it's a good way to be able to see what Stardust can do. And you can click on the links. It'll populate everything into here of what you want to create. Let's go into backgrounds. Say these blue lines. I can click on that and add it. And you can see it adds everything here. So now I can go in, how did they do that? I can click on the emitter, click on the particle, and see how everything is linked together. I can also have more than one thing in at a time. So say we want to add some text, some flower text. And then on top of this, we also want to add a background to it. Maybe these ones, something gray. And you can see that's all together in the same 3D space. So that's kind of how powerful this is. Now, I also must warn you that the more you add, the slower everything bogs down. And I don't have the fastest computer anymore. It used to be a few years ago, but it's not anymore. So things are just, it starts to get slow. If you, the more you add, naturally, the slower it's going to get. So just kind of watch out for that. Oh, this is cool. You got some graphic elements. Even some 2D looking stuff. Even though it's a full 3D plugin, you can do 2D stuff. So go in and check out these presets, because this is where you're going to learn a lot about how things are put together. When I was going through all these presets, I'm like, oh, I didn't know it could do that. And it could do a lot of stuff. All right, let's build something cool. So let's grab a new background. Doesn't matter the color, because I'm going to just add to this the ramp effect. Turn it to radial. Swap the colors. And let's change that to kind of a blue. We're going to do an underwater look. Now on this top layer with Stardust, let's name these layers. Stardust for the top one. Background. Let's start by adding an emitter and a particle. And then this emitter, I want it to be a sphere. And let's have it emit once. And then with the particle, let's bring the life up past 10 seconds. And let's increase our particles. I also want to take the speed down to 0 so it just kind of stays put. Now I also want to add to this a replicator. And let's go and do the same trick where we change the scale. I'm going to do 100.1, so just a small change. Let's bring that out. And then we can see down here, there's along path properties. And then there we can change the color along the path. We can change the size, which is what I want to do. I want to turn those into kind of spikes. Let's also change the color along the path as well. So we go from black to white. There's also some cool presets. So we can say make that purple That's really cool. Okay, to this let's add some turbulence. Offset position. Whoa, that's really cool. A little bit too much there. Let's try 20. And I want this scale, well, not scale, but the noise scale down here. I want this noise to be bigger noise. That's a little bit better. Speed. Okay. This is starting to look like some sort of underwater sea creature. Let's give it something that these tentacles latch onto on the inside. So what I'm going to do is take the same emitter that I used because the size is still right, duplicate it. Duplicate that particle. Now this particle, instead of a circle, let's do a model. And then let's add to that a model node. And then let's add a material to that model. So then this model, I'm going to go in and let's make it a primitive. And let's make it a sphere. Okay. Now with the 3D models, they are affected by lights in your composition. So let's add a new light to this. You can see how those are shaded now. Let's go back to the emitter and let's crank up the particles per second so that we can fill this in. Maybe let's take the particle and make that bigger. Let's go 15 by 15. Okay. Now if I play through this, it's starting to bog down. So let's the tentacles are moving from the turbulence, but the other isn't. So let's take this and attach it to the particle as well. Now you can see it's moving together. See how, because of the nodes, you can easily do that. It's really kind of cool how that works. Let's take the particles on the tentacles down, so there's not so many of them. About like that. This is looking really cool. Let's change the material. And right there on the material under diffuse color, color from particle is set to 100. So we bring that down. And now it's getting color from right here. So we can change the inner color. It's a little bit too much. Let's go maybe a red or a pink. Okay. So we can also come in here and make these tentacles. Right now they're made out of 2D objects. But if I'm going to go 3D, I'm going to go 3D for the tentacles as well. I think they'll end up looking a little nicer. So I'm going to duplicate this model and this material. I don't want to use the same because I'm going to change the material color. And let's link that right into the particle, just like how we have this one. Let's maybe move this over here. Keep things kind of organized. Now let's go into the particle, change that from circle to model. Wow, there it is. See how it just swapped everything over? Let's go into that material. This is material too, and I can really feel that things are starting to slow down. It's really chugging along here with all these 3D stuff, but it looks so cool. Let's change this back to that purple color. So up at the top, we have our render settings, and we can come in here, and I want to add some ambient occlusion. Change the gamma, and maybe bring the intensity down. Okay. I'm gonna turn this off for now, and I'll check that back on before I render. I'm also in the quality settings. Let's do it on medium. Doesn't look as good, but it's gonna, preview a lot faster. I also want to add to this some floating bubbles, and I can do that here in Stardust as well. So let's just make some room, add another emitter, another particle, and this emitter, let's change it to a sphere. Make the size nice and big. Speed down to 0. Let's make the particles per second. Let's emitting once, and in the particle, make those last a little longer. Go back to the emitter, increase the particles per second. Now to this, I want to add a force. And let's just have a negative gravity. Let's go to the particle. Bring the opacity down and the size down. I think we need a little bit more turbulence here. So let's increase the amplitude. Okay. So let's come in here, and that's about all I think I'm going to do with Stardust. Let's add some other stuff to make it look more like it's underwater. So I'm going to first get a new solid. I'm going to call this one light. Let's add some turbulent noise to it. Transform that so the scale is up. Increase the contrast. Bring the complexity down. And then to the evolution, we're going to add an expression. So that's Alt or Option on your keyboard. Click on the stopwatch for evolution, and then just type time, and then times that by 100. And then what that'll do is it'll automatically evolve this. Okay. So let's take now a mask. And mask that out. And to this, let's add CC radial fast blur. Have the point up top. Maybe way up top. I'm going to stretch that out. And you can see it kind of looks like light coming through the water. I might want to come in here and to that light, let's add some color correction and increase the contrast. Also, on these Stardust layers, even though there's lots of effects, you can see all those effects, you can add just normal After Effects built-in effects to it as well. So if I wanted to come in here and color correct or change the contrast on it, you can do that. Let's to this add a new adjustment layer. To this adjustment layer, let's add Gaussian blur. Let's crank that up. Repeat the pixel edges and drop the opacity. And you can see how it kind of gives a haze. Maybe let's add a tint to this as well. Let's add another adjustment layer to that. Add tint. Let's take that black and let's go, an aquamarine kind of a color, and bring the amount to tint down. Awesome. Okay, so let's render this and for a little bit and see what it looks like. All right, here it is. I think it's looking pretty cool. Now, in conclusion, Stardust is, a really cool plugin. It's doing things differently. It's really powerful as far as what you can do with the nodes and link things to this to that, and everything's all in one 3D space, which is really cool. And it's more than just a particle program. It goes beyond because of the nodes, because of the 3D objects you can bring into it as well. And there's just a lot of cool stuff. So even if you're not planning on buying it, definitely go download the trial and try it out. There's a link in the description. You can go right to where you can go and check that out. Now, my computer did get bogged down at times. There is a lot going on. I don't have the newest computer. Here's my stats. It's a 4-year-old computer, iMac, but it's not terrible. But I can't blame the program for me having an older computer. But when you do add lots and lots of stuff, it does start to get bogged down. But basic particle stuff, is fine. But anyways, if you are into particles, and this might be just the plugin just for you. It's really cool. It's new, cutting edge stuff, and the nodes. You know what? I didn't know if I was going to like it when I was first playing around with it. It took me a minute to get used to, but after playing with it for a few days, it's really cool, and there's a lot of stuff you can do. So highly recommend it. That's Stardust. And just click on the link in the description and go check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.